lesson, you'll learn how to use the filters that are in Motion 5 and have those filters work directly within Final Cut Pro. So you will publish some of the special filters that are built into Motion to activate within Final Cut. And we're going to have a look at a fairly simple process called contrast control. Now within Final Cut you can contrast control items by selecting on the correction and selecting on the exposure, and we can increase the contrast or reduce the contrast on a global basis with the blacks, with the midtones and with the whites. Let's just reset that. But in Motion there is a contrast filter that gives you more control. So if we just switch over to Motion now and have a look at Motion, here is the same clip with the contrast filter selected. Now we selected this by going to the library, selecting the filters, selecting the contrast filter and dragging that onto our clip. So by selecting contrast there and going to the inspector, here we are with the contrast filter. Now as we can do in Final Cut, we can increase and decrease the contrast. But more importantly, what we can also do if we increase the contrast, where here this is too much now, we can also move the pivot point. So if we increase the contrast just a little bit and move the pivot point, what we're seeing now is that the sky itself is starting to show some of the blue, and we're not over contrasting the land there. So there's much more blue there and a little bit more contrast there. Now look at how much sky we've got and the contrast here. Maybe we would also want to lighten this a little down here as well. So let's just take the contrast back a little bit and move the pivot point. That's with the smooth contrast turned on. Now you can also turn on luminance. Now what luminance tends to do is to give a washed effect. So this would be to give it some sort of feel, perhaps whether it might be an historical view where you're going back in time, and as you change these you get more of the washed out effect without reducing the color too much. Let's turn that luminance off. What luminance only is doing is changing the whites and the blacks only and not the colors. So that's given us quite a good contrast that perhaps we might like to reproduce in Final Cut. But what we can do is to send this effect, this filter, and have it become one of the filters in Final Cut. And to do that, let's start from scratch. We will open a new window here in Motion. We'll select the Final Cut effects. And here we have a drop zone. So let's leave that as a drop zone because we want to add our clips in Final Cut when this filter gets into Final Cut. So we'll go to the library now and we'll select the filters. And we'll select color correction and contrast, and we'll drag that on top of the effect. That's the drop zone. Now if we were to export this, we wouldn't have the controls that Motion has. So what we now need to do is to go to the inspector, and you can see here is all of our controls for this filter. But if we move over onto the right hand side here and click this downward arrow, you can see you can publish the contrast, you can publish the ability to change the pivot, you can publish the smooth contrast, you can publish the luminance, and maybe we want to use this feature here where you can select to have just the whites, just the blacks, or black and white, or none of the color values affected. So let's publish that as well, and we'll publish the ability to mix those, so we'll select publish there as well. Now all of the controls for this filter have now been published into the effect. And when we save this effect now, save as, we will save it as new filter, and we'll save it into the favorites. Now I've created a favorites folder, so now let's publish that. And when we go to Final Cut now and look in our filters, and we'll look in the favorites filter, we'll see there is the new filter. We can drag that filter on top of Final Cut, come up into the inspector. There is the ability to change the contrast, to change the pivot point, smooth contrast and luminance. Now you can do this with any filter in Motion.